Hi, I'm Cynthia McBride, the pastor of First Christian Church in downtown Portland. It is Holy Wednesday, the middle of Holy Week, April 8th, 2020. Sometimes the Wednesday of Holy Week is also referred to as Spy Wednesday. It's the day when scholars speculate that Judas Iscariot, began to form a plan to betray Jesus, to conspire with those who were plotting to have him arrested. One of the places that story is told is in Matthew 26. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. They conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people." Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment. She poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. The stories of this Wednesday in Jesus' life are troubling. Stories of betrayal by one of his closest friends, by a member of his inner circle, by Judas, who had been entrusted to be the treasurer of the group. It is hard sometimes to fathom betrayal, why it happens, how it happens. Surely there are some in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic who feel betrayed. There are essential workers who don't have enough protective equipment. They feel betrayed by their employers or the companies that they work for. There are individuals who wish that they could have testing to see if they're positive for COVID-19, and they feel betrayed, perhaps by a government that promised tests and can't deliver, or by medical supply companies that aren't living up to expectations. Betrayal. Those who had hoped that loved ones would survive this pandemic and instead are facing death. They feel betrayed. Perhaps there is a connection for us in the midst of Holy Week with Jesus, because we ourselves are living in the midst of a most difficult time. It's possible that we are closer drawn to Him than we have been for a long time. The story of the woman in Bethany quite possibly is a reference to Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, gathered in their home. Perhaps it was one of them who broke open an alabaster jar and poured precious ointment on Jesus. He speaks of how she is symbolically preparing him for his burial, anointing him as a sign of his death to come. Tonight, as you hear my words, there are people in our world who are preparing for death. There are loved ones who are isolated from husbands and wives, mothers and fathers, even from children. There are people who are wishing they could be close to hold the hand of a precious family member who is close to breathing their last. There are people in our world who are preparing for death because it is inevitable. There are cities placing orders for staggering numbers of body bags to haul away the dead, victims of COVID-19. Fortunately, most of us may not be pressed that closely, that intimately, that personally by this tragedy, but we actually don't know. The story of Jesus that we enter into during Holy Week, make no mistake, it is a story of death. Oftentimes, Christians who worship on Sunday find themselves celebrating Palm Sunday, Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and Easter, the glory of resurrection. And sometimes Christians even skip over those days in between. But at the heart of Holy Week is the reality of death. Death and betrayal. My friends, tonight, on Holy Wednesday, on Spy Wednesday, on April 8th of 2020, if you are feeling betrayed, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling that death is nearer than you want it to be, to yourself, to someone you love, to our world at large, then you truly are at the heart of Holy Week. Then you are on this Wednesday right where Jesus was, staring face to face the grim reality of the brokenness of humanity. Even in the midst of this tragic place, I pray it gives you comfort to know that through Christ, God's own self understands what that feels like to be betrayed, to face death itself. On this night, this Holy Wednesday, may you know you are not alone. Jesus is with you even now.